Well, hello, it's Rits here from Fortis Proactive Defense Solutions, and I am speaking to Roux Wildenboer again. Roux is one of the main instructors of the Lone Operator course based here in Pretoria, and tonight we will be talking about optics versus iron sights, more specifically in defense related. Good evening and welcome.
Hi, Rian. How are you? It's nice to speak to you again.
Good, thank you very much. Thank you for joining us again. Roux, I'm going
No
to
problem.
jump straight in and start at the beginning. What are the core differences
Yeah,
between iron sights and optical sights like red dots and stuff when it
all
comes
right,
to a defensive use?
sure. So fundamentally, iron sights are what most people are used to. Iron sights are what most people, especially shooters dating back a couple of years and decades, have started out shooting handgun and, in fact, rifle as well with. The red dots and the optics on handguns is a relatively new concept. Um, and the fundamental difference between the two is that with iron sights, you have a front sight and a rear sight mounted on your gun, which when you present out is only about, say, half a meter away from your face. So
Mhm.
you've got 3 points that can draw your focus when you start shooting in a defensive scenario. You've got the rear sight, you've got the front sight, and you've got the target, which can be located anywhere from well, very close to you all the way up to 30, 40, 50 meters, however far you think you're comfortable engaging a target in self-defense. I mean, whatever the scenario dictates. But so the shooter shooting iron sights has to shift his focus somewhat between the target and his sights, and sometimes somewhere in between. And sometimes, because that's just how your brain works, sometimes if you're distracted or you're not concentrating enough, you can actually focus on the wrong thing, or your focus can be drawn by the wrong thing. The benefit of optics and where the optics differ from the iron sights is that if you look through the optic mounted on your handgun, the red dot or the green dot or your reticle, whatever you have, appears as though it is projected onto the target. So automatically your brain and your eyes really only focus on one distance. It's really only focused on the target because you see that red dot as if it is projected onto the target. So you're running a lower risk of being distracted by different kinds of things on your gun. You don't need to shift your focus from your target back to your gun, as in the case with iron sights, depending on the shot and depending on the scenario. So in a tactical environment, the benefit for me of an optic on your handgun is that your focus can remain on the target the entire time, and you see your reticle, your little aiming device, you see that on your target the entire time at the same distance. At least that's what it looks like to your eye. I mean, everybody knows that on your optic there's a little dot that's reflected in the glass, but to you it looks as though that dot is projected onto the target. So that's a big advantage because you don't have to shift your focus. You don't have to shift your focus back to your gun. Everything happens at the distance that the target is from you. So I think it offers a great benefit. And that's not to say iron sights can't be shot equally well, but there's definitely a fundamental difference in the way that it interacts with your eye. Definitely, no doubt.
Okay, okay. So in high stress situations, like let's say, I don't know, home invasion or maybe an armed robbery and so on, how does the speed or target acquisition compare between iron sights and a red dot sight?
My opinion is that shooting with an optic on your handgun, if you learn to shoot it well, can open up doors for you in terms of target acquisition, in terms of speed at which you can shoot. Very definitely. I'll start out
Mhm.
by saying I don't have optics on my handguns, and there's no specific reason for that. I just, I haven't gotten to it, and I've gotten used to my iron sights. But there's no denying that having a red dot on your gun can, no, it doesn't always, it can provide vast improvements to how quickly you pick up your sight. So if your draw stroke is practiced, and it's as part of your subconscious muscle memory and subconscious competence, um, as is shooting iron sights for certain shooters. Then you pick up that red dot as fast, if not faster, than you align your iron sights on a target. I mean, just thinking about it logically, you've got one thing, you've got only one red dot, and picking up that red dot in the little window of the optic, that for certain beginner shooters does present a bit of a challenge because they're not used to it. So their draw stroke isn't polished. They're not doing it consistently enough. They haven't spent enough time dry firing with the red dot. But if you do that, and if we assume that you do that, and you're a diligent dry fire practitioner, and you spend enough time at home doing your work, then picking up a red dot can be very, very fast, indeed faster than picking up iron sights. In a home invasion type scenario, again, there's fewer things for you to focus on. There's fewer planes of distance for you to have to focus on, as it is with potentially shooting iron sights. Now, I know experienced iron sight shooters will say that you actually remain target focused and you really just see your sights in the line to the target, and that's also true. But still, it's not the same as a little red dot or something like that looks like a laser being projected onto your target, telling you exactly where you're going to shoot. It's really just not the same. So in a high stress environment, the answer is, if you spend enough time with your red dot, then it can make you very quick and very lethal and very accurate. If you don't, then there's no benefit to you having a red dot. So if you don't spend enough time, then it doesn't really matter what you have.
So that brings me to a question that I've actually got for a bit further on in the conversation. But seeing as how you touched on that now, iron sights, how do they hold up when you are under pressure, specifically iron sights now? And especially if you've been skipping on training, dry firing and so on, and your eyes have rest as well, which happens when you get older.
Yeah, look, if you skip on training, there's really not much I can say. Then no kind of iron sight or red dot will compensate for a lack of training. Never. However, with shooters getting older and perhaps eyesight becoming a little bit worse and deteriorating with years, the red dot does provide a massive benefit. Where previously shooters, as I say, because of this focus issue, because of the way in which you have to focus close to you as well as focus far apart from you and see both, see at both depths, shooters had to either try and shoot with bifocals, which just turns into a mess, because in a high stress environment now, using your glasses to focus on it just becomes a mess. So in fact, and especially in many tactical sports and in many older shooters now start making use of red dots because it just works with their eyes, and it actually allows shooters who would have had a very hard time with iron sights to still be accurate and fast because they now have a red dot, and the red dot shines relatively brightly. So if your eyesight is deteriorating, then you pick it up very fast. So no, iron sights can hold up. I mean, there's been significant developments and advancements in your iron sights as well. I'm talking about things that glow or blacked out rear sights, all kinds of efforts that manufacturers have made to try and make iron sights faster to pick up. I mean, and that's why the modern polymer frame, the modern self-defense pistols don't come out with iron sights that are specifically meant for aiming very fine. They come out with iron sights that are meant to be picked up as you draw as fast as possible. So they're often big, they're bunky, they've got, big white dots and big white buckets, as in the case with, for instance, Glocks. And it's not there for you to put a very accurate shot at 100 meters. You can, but it's made to pick up very quickly. And in that case, I think if you work your red dot enough, you'll always be faster. If I take two shooters of relatively equal skill level, the one with the dot will be faster on the follow-up shots. But that's only if he spends enough time with the dot. I want to emphasize that. You have to,
With it.
the
Yeah.
dot is not a magic answer. You have to spend a lot of time with it.
So you've now started, or you've mentioned things that shine and brightness and so on, which got me to think about low light situations.
Yeah.
So one of the bigger arguments, I don't know if it's one of the main arguments for red dots and optic sights like that, things that shine.
Yeah. So
Specified. Can you maybe walk us through how that can potentially play out in a real life self-defense situation?
yeah. So if we think about no light or low light situations, which is probably the most likely scenario in which you're going to be attacked. I mean, during the whole lone operator course, we hammer on no light and low light shooting because that's when criminals have the advantage. Okay? They've got the objective advantage in that you can't really see in the dark. We're not nocturnal animals. Our eyes don't see very well in the dark. The bad guys have got a lot of spaces to hide, so they tend to attack in the dark. With iron sights, we also teach very definitely that you cannot just start blasting into the dark. You need positive target identification, whether you're shooting iron sights or red dot. You need to have enough light on your target to identify it as a target and not just to start shooting at anything that goes bump in the night. If you do have enough light on the target to identify it as a target, but your iron sights aren't necessarily glow in the dark or luminescent, then and you don't have any type of like a flashlight shining onto the target. So it's really like just enough light to know there's a threat, and this is the threat, and it is a life-threatening threat. But there's not enough light for you to actually pick up the silhouette of your front and your rear sight of your normal iron sights. Then that's where glow in the dark or luminescent iron sights really start making a difference, because now you can actually align your front sight with your rear sight. This is also incidentally where red dots come into their own, because you actually don't need to line anything up. The red dot is shining already, and it can be as bright as you want outside or as dark in your house as possible, and you are going to see that red shining light. One thing that we've picked up on lone operator in the night shoots is that if your eyes have become now used to the dark over the course of a couple of minutes, and you are starting to make out certain shapes. So let's say, for instance, you wake up in the dark in your house. Your eyes are relatively accustomed to the dark. I mean, you can pick up shadows. You can often see with ambient light just a little bit of what's going on. You can make out your cupboards. You can make out the door. You can make out shapes. If you then raise your red dot, and that red dot is set at too bright a setting, sometimes that red dot can make you lose that little bit of call it night vision that you have. It can actually blind you in the way that a very bright light will blind you at that moment. So we often tell red dot shooters that the red dot also isn't the be all and end all in no light or low light scenarios and situations. We preach for people to have, in those kinds of scenarios, we advise people to have either a handheld light on them or a weapon mounted light on them. And if they do, then the argument in low light environments between a red dot and iron sights sort of becomes much of a muchness. But if you don't have something like an external source of light, like a handheld light or a weapon mounted light, then these two, like say for instance the optic and any type of illumination on your sights, like glow in the dark or luminescent sights, actually beat normal iron sights, by quite far away. You can always say, okay, well, what are the odds of this scenario playing out? But each has their pros and cons, I would say. So it's a difficult question, actually. I would say have light and then use whatever sights you have, but get light on your targets. Primary objective.
Okay. Red dots are often praised for accuracy at longer distances. How relevant is that in a civilian self-defense situation, when
Yeah.
generally such encounters happen at very close range? I mean,
Yeah.
if you start shooting at a guy at like 100 meters or 50 meters, I don't know how far you're going to get with the whole self-defense situation.
Yeah, exactly. So in a self-defense environment, absolutely. You can always argue, definitely, and it's true, that a red dot that's sighted properly can be very accurate at a very long distance. There's no argument about that. With iron sights, even if you know them very well, the fact that your sight radius on your gun is only this long and the sights are close to your face, it doesn't look like that shot is projected onto your target. It does make a difference. The red dots are certainly more accurate at distance. If you start thinking about, like you say, very close quarter encounters, and I would say up to, for experienced shooters, up to 10, 15 meters, it wouldn't make that much of a difference. If I'm confronted by an attacker that's really about 5 meters away from me or closer, I can't tell you that I would get any benefit from shooting a red dot over iron sights. In fact,
Okay.
I think in the fact that my body position may be compromised, I may not even be able to see the red dot sight, and that's a bit of a drawback, because if your body position is compromised, say I'm shooting from retention, or I'm under a bed or under a car, or my one arm is bent out of proportion and I can really only make out the general geometry of the gun, then iron sights may actually provide a bit of a benefit, because I need to look through that window of the optic at a very specific angle to actually start picking up the dot. So then, yeah, no, at close distance, I can't really tell you that there's much of a benefit shooting a red dot than shooting iron sight, if the target is big enough. If you have to shoot a very accurate shot, so say for instance I need to shoot someone on the tip of their nose, and I've got one shot to make it count, then you may argue, okay, well, a red dot would be better suited for that shot. But if you feel at all uncomfortable making a shot like that, that's a high risk shot, you don't have a lot of freedom on left, right, up or down deviation, then the argument could be made, well, maybe you should try and get to a better position. And I think if that's really the only avenue available to you, then sure, make use of the better accuracy that presumably the red dot offers you. But it's still gonna, I mean, that's only one factor in shooting a very accurate shot. I mean, there's other things. Is your grip correct? Is your trigger manipulation correct? If those things aren't also in place, then the red dot isn't really going to be of much benefit to you, because at the point that the shot goes off, if your trigger manipulation isn't on point and up to standard, then it doesn't really matter where the dot was. At the point that you squeeze the trigger, the red dot is going to move anyway, and then all of that more accurate aiming isn't going to help you a lot anyway. So it's only one factor. I mean, it isn't the be all and end all, but certainly in a self-defense scenario between like where I am and 10 meters, I'm not going to see much benefit in shooting what I would say the average, I think, shot that a self-defense person is going to have to shoot. No.
Okay. Roux, I'm going to end part one of this two-part series. And just for the viewers, if you find value in this, please remember to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Help us grow it so that we can reach a bigger audience. Roux, thank you so much. I appreciate your time and experience as always, and I'll chat to you again soon.